Welcome, everybody. It's good to be here on the show again. And we are on episode 6. Would AI make meetings obsolete? It's an exciting episode, this episode today, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah, it's a follow-on actually from our episode 5. So we found our way into that conversation, and then we thought, okay, this could be a really interesting topic to tease out in a little bit more detail with some of our former guests, actually. So all 3 of our guests, we've spoken with them previously on other topics. So Jim, Ilkan, and Karen, you've heard this question before, but you might indulge us again. Is there anything that you normally don't share very outwardly, but that you might be willing to share about yourself for our guests or for our visitors and our audience today?
Who wants to start?
On a personal note, I take it.
Whatever, absolutely.
Well, I actually just recently did my first hill walk. So in Scotland, that's a very big thing.
Yeah.
And now when I say hill walk, it's probably a very easy walk for most people in this land, but for me, not so easy. But I got very excited when I got to the top. I mean, when you see the pictures of where we had to get to, I thought, well, it did take a few hours, but it was, and my version of flat versus the Scottish version of flat are 2 wildly different things. But then our leader, she did say, I didn't say it was flat, I said it was easy, and I went, okay, same, but it's beautiful. The land is beautiful. So it was just so we got to this point, this a cairn at the top of this, I think they call it a Gordon. So we have Munros, which are over a certain height, I think 3,000 something feet, and a Gordon is 2,000 or something. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, we sort of got to this top there, and we had these 360-degree views of the Cairngorms and then all the way down to the car. It's just gorgeous.
And you were getting the weather for it as well.
We did. We had good weather, actually. It was a beautiful day. It started off, the morning was just how you wanted, sort of cool, slightly overcast. And then on the way, so that was when we were going up, and then it turned and was beautiful weather on the way back down. It was lovely and sunny and blue. And so this is a new thing. So I've got a new app now. So I'm going to collect walks. Not going to say hikes just yet, but walks. So yeah,
I love these sharings. I want to know more about that app, Karen.
All trails, really cool. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So from my side, Karen's story about trying something new. I found in about the past year or so, I'm really attracted to classic soul music from the 60s and 70s, Marvin Gaye and then Temptations and things like that. And if I open up Spotify and, like, oh, I want to listen to something, I'm going right there, and I'm discovering all this like great stuff that I never really got exposed to. I kind of grew up with like rock, Beatles and hard rock and classic rock, and then I studied jazz and classical and things. So I just found this whole like world of new music out there called soul.
Yeah, maybe I could share also something about the music. So beside of my job in software business, I've been working as a big band conductor for maybe 39 years already.
Oh, wow.
And the latest gig that I was conducting was not like traditional big band music, but our soloist was the #1 rap artist from Finland, and we made arrangements about his songs. And after the gig, several musicians said that this was the best gig ever. The audience was so much with us, and then the artists who have been playing just with a small band or just recorded backgrounds had the full big band behind him. And after every song, he turned to the band and said, "Guys, this is so fucking cool." And then the band was so on fire, and it was like really nice.
Super. Oh, Jesus, I'd love to be involved in something like that.
I want to hear that. You got to send me that link. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wonder, can artificial intelligence replicate that one, Ilka, huh?
I think that the feeling is quite unique when you feel the band spirit and
You've got
the response from the audience. So that cannot be replicated by technology, I think.
Yeah, that's so. Our topic actually is around artificial intelligence, and the possibility that could artificial intelligence make meetings obsolete? That's our topical question. And it may not be that they could completely obliterate meetings, but could they make parts of meetings, functions in meetings, roles in meetings obsolete? And if they do, what are the implications of that for all of us?
May I start?
Shoot, absolutely.
Yeah. So one of my favorite ways of working for a couple of years have been that when we have a company monthly meeting, and there has been like from 80 to 100 people participating. And if you think about this size of the meeting, 1 hour meeting, you think that someone is talking and showing some slides and others are digging their nose or multitasking or doing something else, but not really curious about what is happening. And we have changed that and tried several methods. So one way is to have like totally asynchronous meeting where there's like recorded videos that every team is reporting to others, like 2-minute videos and a couple of slides, and then asynchronous dialogue about each of the topics. But once we are online, we have like probably tens of activations during the meeting so that we are asking questions, we are involving others. And then once you have real-time AI analyzing, summarizing, picking up themes and emotions, then it feels like we can get so much things done, so much prioritized during 1 hour meeting that it's incredible. And when it's started beforehand, like preparations, orientations, and then once there's something interesting in the discussion, it naturally, like without facilitation, it continues until it like shuts down at some point. So like using AI for helping us to collaborate so that it's not replacing, but it's connecting us. I really love this way of working.
And how does it feed back? Is it through a kind of a chat screen or a chat line that it's feeding back to the participants?
No, we are doing it differently. So the idea is that it's not like giving the final truth, or it's not trying to replace the human dialogue, but it's like supporting the human dialogue by, for example, there's real-time summary that is updated once it finds something new from the dialogue. And then you can choose from different algorithms which kind of algorithm you would like to use. And is it like based on comments or replies or both? Then it can find out that what are the main themes of the discussion, updating also in real time. And if you would like to join like a theme, so a thread of the discussion that is like categorized by AI, you can just click join, and then you will have the filtered dialogue so that you can see what people are talking about this topic. Or if you like, quite often we have sentiment analysis, and if people have concerns that is recognized, and then I click show concerns, and then I can see that what kind of concerns people have, and I can reply in a live meeting to those. And without support of AI, that would be totally impossible to like have a chat with 100 people all together.
Wow. Karen, Jim, reaction to that? That sounds really interesting.
Well, I mean, I guess I've seen it in action and use it maybe, with smaller groups. So I use those tools for similar reasons. But I'd like to sort of say I still think most meetings should be eliminated anyway. There's got to be a better way. So for me, and I think what Ilka was saying, the way, how do you have large scale conversation that is valuable? And I think this is where the tools and the AI that can synthesize that information in seconds is just so powerful. I'm going to look at it now from a facilitator's perspective as well. So when you're, in the good old days, if you facilitated a conversation like that, so let's take it into the room again, to a physical room, and let's say you had 100 people in there and you had them all walking around with sticky notes and bits of paper and stuff all over the walls, and albeit it was a lot of fun, but the reality is, did we actually ever really get the full essence of all of that information that's in the room? Because it's almost impossible to take people's different styles of writing. We don't want to insult anybody by saying, I didn't actually understand a word he said on that sticky note. So I think we put a lot of assumptions into that work, and then we make wild promises around taking all of those sticky notes and all of those bits of paper and trying to turn it into something which would take hours, days, if ever. And so I think the bringing AI into that conversation as a host of a meeting, or a meeting of any type, really, I think it brings more truth. It brings more, it allows us to. So I think what Ilka said is really important. It's not replacing in the way that we're talking about it anyway. It's not replacing. It's not coming up with new ideas. However, so it's taking what is there in the room and really turning it into meaningful content. And it really is bringing it from everybody. So that's one use. There is another way we can use, like, let's say, do I use those 5-letter words? No, it's 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. That, the other AI tools out there.
Yeah.
That you do go to and ask questions of and see what it comes back with. I think we can use that in meetings as well. Maybe in smaller meetings, I don't know, but I think there's a way of integrating us as humans in that meeting and introduce this technology, chat GPT or whatever you want to call it, right? By saying, okay, well, here's another intelligence in the room. How can we use it? So let's ask it a question, because it might help prompt us to come up with better conversation in the actual meeting with the humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, Ilka.
Yeah, one thought from last week when we were talking about generative AI and what is our approach as transformation professionals and facilitators towards it. And then I found myself saying that actually in our context, AI should help us to be generative.
Yes. And yes, which I think is kind of that way of using it, isn't it? It's not there to, it's all in the power of how we use it and train it, whatever. I'm not one of the people that's scared of it. I think it's brilliant. I love generative AI. Yeah.
Jim, you're
so far.
If you've had
I'm very much aligned with both Ilka and Karen, and just to react and respond to 2 points, one from each of them. I know the title of this session is "Will AI Replace Meetings?" and the focus was on AI, but my mind went right to meetings. I think Karen kind of suggested that, like, do we need
need them in the first place?
Right. And my view is that I believe, and maybe I need to do more historical research on this, but the metaphor of a meeting, I believe, came from physical office places, right? And the technology of the time was the office itself. I sat over here and I got up and I went over there for an hour, half an hour, and I had a meeting. And then when the pandemic hit, we all went home, and that the technology changed from the office place to Zoom. And we said, wait a minute, maybe this meeting could have been an email, right? There's that funny cartoon. And we had to rethink what a meeting was. And the point I want to make is that our technology enables us to do different things, and we need to adapt to that. So I think we need to really adapt what a meeting is to the technology. And, I just mentioned Zoom, but now AI, and what does AI allow us to do? The way that I like to phrase it is that, to shift from the noun, a meeting, to the verb, to meet. And I think we need to think a lot more about meeting, which is, collaborating, meeting of minds, meeting of ideas, which, guess what? It doesn't have to be done synchronously in that same hour slot. Because as we know, if you do that all day long, you have, the online fatigue and all those kinds of things. But what that really brings up for me is a flipped metaphor. I don't know if you've heard of the flipped classroom before, right? When I was in college 3 years ago, no, a little bit more than 3 years. You used to go and listen to the professor and take notes, and then you went home and did your work. Well, guess what? With videos, I can watch the professor so that when I go to the classroom, I get the work done. I think we need to think about work in that way. So what Ilkka said really resonated with me is that you can do a lot of the information sharing and getting up to speed together. You can do a lot of that asynchronously, and AI can help you do that, as well as Karen pointed out, to unblock or to move things along. But the part of meeting, I think, for me, that's most interesting, and this goes to a point I think Karen was talking about, is what happens after the meeting. I have found in my own research that the biggest pain point that people have is follow-up, getting information to stick, getting actions to stick. And there's this phenomena that I've called meeting amnesia, right? Where, and Karen, you described it perfectly, right? You're in the room and the energy's great and the sticky notes are all over the place. And there's this assumed promise that something is going to happen with that. And very often it fizzles out, it evaporates, and the energy certainly evaporates, but actually the content evaporates as well too, right? And then nothing happens. And I think in this, okay, let's recontextualize. Let's come up with a new metaphor for what a meeting is and shift to the verb to meet. And I think one spot that is really interesting for me is the follow-up. And I believe on this call we're having AI summarize this for us, right? So that right there, just that is huge in terms of helping us reimagine what a meeting can be. So the technology, it's never a technology problem, it's always a human problem, but the technology changes the human problem. And I think we have to adapt. And yeah, maybe it is a good thing if AI replaces meetings, but I think it'll help us be more effective and maximize our together time.
That's interesting. So there's two add values identified. Ilkka, from Ilkka's point there, the add value, and Karen, you overlap that point. The add value is in handling very large numbers of people and getting this continuous updated summary of the content of what's evolving, which is notoriously difficult for any one individual to do, even with a relatively small group. But Jim, the second potential add value then is in that follow-up. So what happened, the notes, and not only, I'm not talking minutes now, I'm talking the essence. So Karen, your point there about the vibe, the atmosphere, the energy, and then to translate that into extracting out the key content. So is that the primary focus where we would see AI contributing rather than replacing? Is that where we're heading with the conversation?
Maybe. I think it's a yes and. I mean, that we think about AI right now as a place, something I go to and I interact with AI, but I think AI is going to underlie a lot of our software technology. And if meetings are now mediated through software, I think AI is going to underlie the before, the during, and the after of a meeting and help us get started, help us keep going, and then help the momentum afterwards as well.
Ilkka.
Yeah, I think people like to meet each other, but they don't like meetings. And so what is the difference? And I think that because we would like to meet each other, what we would like to do as a natural thing is that we would like to talk about things that are important for us. And what we are doing in meetings is creating agendas that are making us as machines that are just proceeding the something that might not be meaningful at all. And so one of my former colleagues developed a method. I think there's a book in English as well about this. He started to talk about no agenda meetings, so that you have like empty space, 2 hours, and then you start by asking that, what should we talk about today? What is important for you?
Important to us, yeah.
Yeah, and then like listening to everyone, and then next question is that, okay, we heard everyone, which topic should we pick? Maybe we have time for 2 or 3. And then once you start discussion, the next question is that, how should we talk about this topic so that it's useful for all of us? And then you start the conversation. A lot of space, a lot of meaning, a lot of personal connections, something that you might remember rest of your life, and you hardly remember any meeting that is formal and structured and like part of the machine kind of organizational thinking.
That's really interesting. Yeah, Karen?
I was just thinking, this group here, we're quite familiar now with technology, and we're quite, I'm going to say, forward thinking or appreciating of what's in front of us and what we can use. But of course, not everybody that we work with and all the groups that we may associate with are like that. So I think there's something in here that we do need to also consider everybody and what are their needs. And it's interesting, I'm part of something I did earlier today. I do some volunteer work for our national life-saving organization, Life Saving Lives at Sea organization, the RNLI. And, we have these really, really traditional type of monthly meetings. And you can just see by the look on my face how exciting they are. We get the agenda, which is 12 points long, and we go, right, apologies, welcome, Treasurer's report. I've just emailed it to you. Nobody ever asks a question about the Treasurer's report, right? The whatever report. The only thing that's interesting when we get to other business and we can all go, all right, now we can talk. Oh, it's time to go. So, but shifting people from that idea to an open meeting, which we're going to try next week, is we're going to have a no agenda meeting, right? What are we going to talk about? What do we want? We're here to talk about fundraising. We're not here to talk about an agenda, right? So let's talk about that. But for some people, that's going to be like, oh my God, there's no structure. I'm terrified, right? And then you add AI into that, and now we've got a whole holy mess, yeah? In someone's mind and heart, at least. Yeah.
So familiarity with, but there's 2 things there, Karen, I think that you're touching. One is familiarity with technology and the use of technology. And then 2 is familiarity with the form of the meeting.
Yes.
And they're 2 quite different things.
Yes.
But equally important in the context of what we're talking about. Whether AI will or won't make meetings obsolescent or in some way augment them to actually significantly improve them and improve the ultimate outcomes. So are they 2 fundamental issues that have to be grasped before the full benefits of AI can actually be realized?
I don't know if it's before. I think it's that's part of the transformation and the evolution we're going to see. I really do, as I mentioned in my previous comment, I really do. It feels to me like there's this kind of awakening, and I'll say that very intentionally, of how of interaction in a team or collaborating right now. And I think that's because the new possibilities of technology, the new context we've been thrust into, all remote and things like that. And we're just now learning what I call a new common sense, right? It was common sense before, again, I was mentioning from the office, I'd go from the office and I'd sit down and we'd sit around a table and there were rules of engagement. How did you get started? What did you do just, while you're walking in? How did you get started? How did you end that, right? And we shifted from, hey, did you get the memo and where's the meeting room, to, how do I get on Zoom and how do I unmute, right? And just talking about that, I just want to be even more microscopic here. I used to work for GoToMeeting, made by Citrix. It's a telecommunication platform. And when I got there in about 2012 or 2013, one of the big challenges we had was that people didn't realize they could talk through their computer, right? Because prior to that, right, the common sense was to dial into a phone bridge, right? And people were still doing that through our tool, which meant they entered in twice, once for the video, once for the audio, and then they'd get feedback. And just telling people that they can talk through their computer. And I think then, oh, okay, now with Skype, I can talk through my computer. And then it was the mute button, right? And one thing that I see during the pandemic is just and when I say we with like a capital we, the common sense of meeting is people know the mute now. We've learned that. And I think we're on a journey. I think the pandemic has created this awakening, and we're on this journey towards a new metaphor through all of this technology now, AI and all of it included. And we're 5 years out, maybe 10 years out before we have this new common sense around what it is, what a meeting is. And I would say the question should be, what does it mean to meet? Because that's very different than what a meeting is. Because I think the old metaphor of a meeting has to evolve and change.
And that's going back into Ilka's point about people like to meet, but people don't like meetings. And then the possibilities. So here's a thought as the conversation is evolving. If AI is the listening ear on the wall, okay, and we don't structure the meetings at all, we just meet and we just talk about what we think is important, and then we use AI to actually extract the summary, extract the priority, analyze the emotion behind the speech, distill from that where we feel importance lies, and then create the inverted commas, the agenda or the feed forward, not into the minutes, but the feed forward into the feedback to the participants, which Jim is going back to a point you made much earlier to say, well, it all evaporated. Karen, you made the same point. The vibe, the sense, the content, it all happened on the day, but it just disappeared. Does AI offer us this potentially groundbreaking opportunity to transform how we meet? Jim or Ilka?
I think more radical things are in our thinking than in AI at the moment. So if we think about, let's say this meeting, I'm eager to speak all the time, and then I have to wait for 10-15 minutes, cross my fingers, forget what I was about to say, and so on. And I think everyone has the same feeling that there's airspace for just one person at a time. So how could we rethink the whole meeting thing? Like what we have been doing for 10-15 years is like, let's be quiet in a meeting for 5 minutes and everyone is typing in things that AI is analyzing. So you don't have to wait for your turn. And if you have to wait for your turn, the quality of the dialogue is not dialogue at all. It's like a series of monologues, because if you cross your fingers 10 minutes ago, you are going to say something that is not more relevant at the moment. And now we are used to that. It's quite natural for Finns, but for other cultures, it might be weird to be in an online meeting quiet for 5-10 minutes. But it's so powerful, and then there's a lot of things that can be a natural way for the continuity of the dialogue. So you cannot read it all during the meeting. You can see analysis by AI, but you have a reason to come back so that it connects to your daily work. And now we are testing like even more weird thing that is like we can all talk at the same time. So we mute our microphones, we talk to Howspace, it's transcribed in real time, transcription is analyzed by AI, so we can all talk simultaneously, even 100 people. And let's see how that will change the world. And the last thing I would like to say is that traditionally when you think about a workshop or a meeting, you think about the storyline, that you start, then you speed up, and then you slow down and close the thing. it's not no miracle that nothing happens after that because you closed it.
Right.
But what I think is that if you like to have like continuous flow, you need to like speed, and then when you are at the highest point, then stop, and then agree that how are we continuing this all this energy. And if you're using technology during the meeting, a familiar place that where you did all the job, you can go back there and it looks the same. If you are like documenting the post-it notes to PowerPoint, it's not the same. It's like wrong context. There's no personal connection to it anymore.
I'd say the only piece of paper I have on my desk is just one sheet of paper so that I can keep track of some thoughts and to-dos. Otherwise, I'm completely digital. But I actually have a term for that, and I agree it's broader than just AI. It's parallel processing. And I think one of the things why people don't like meetings, particularly all online meetings, is because this robbing you of your time, this one by one, there's a funnel, there's a very, very tight funnel of all of the energy and the information and ideas that we have in our head goes through one at a time, right? And what if you can parallel process? That is, what if we can all talk at the same time? The reason why this is very interesting for me, you know, I work here at Mural, a visual online whiteboard, and what I find is when you add that to a meeting, right? So if we had this meeting going in a Canvas at the same time, I would literally have been typing this, and you could have seen what I wrote down here, Karen, and everybody else, right? As we're going. So it's not just AI. I totally agree with you, Ilkka, that this parallel processing, it's a new metaphor. That's what I was saying. We have to rethink what the metaphor of a meeting is. And it's not this one by one, right? Because it's so inefficient. If you have a meeting with 10 people and only one person is talking, think of what that costing your company, you know, when all this energy and ideas and things. And I think so AI is one of the technologies, and I think that will unlock a lot of potential of teams, that we're gonna literally unleash all of this genius that never gets a chance to speak, or that gets forgotten or evaporated.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things with what, you know, Ilkka's tool is that it kind of allows us to do that already. Yep. And so does yours, actually, just in different formats, right? So, and I'm quite a lover of both, so there you go. Anyway, two of my favorite tools that come out of that last 3 years. So what I was thinking is that, you know, everybody's getting busier as well. So this concept of meeting and being in a meeting now, so I'm now talking about in a meeting. And you're right, you know, what you guys are saying is that's not having a gathering, that's not communication, actually. You know, it's a bit transactional. And I think this is where the meeting has to no longer be transactional. It has to be a place to meet with purpose. But, you know, and I see it even, you know, I run training and, you know, cohort-based training. And, you know, that big thing is, how do we keep that conversation? How do we start the conversation beforehand? How do we move it afterwards? See, I'm well trained, Ilkka. And how do we keep it going afterwards, right? And, you know, and I think all of these tools allow this if it's facilitated well. So now coming to our facilitation world again, and we all have that ability to do that. You know, if we have a shared agreement around how we're going to do things, it's also, I think, what the power of these tools allow us to do is to give as you were saying, give everyone a voice. And it doesn't have to be here. It can be here. Not everybody processes at the same rate or the same time. It doesn't make any one individual less or more. We are just individuals. We're different. And so these tools, I think, allow us more flexibility, more inclusive, much more diversity of thought as well. So it allows for all of these humannesses to actually come together in a better way. So if these tools should help us to be better at being human, actually, as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Can I introduce a fly into the ointment here?
How big is it?
AI to do its thing. it has to listen.
Mm.
And to do the scope of the things that you're all talking about, or that we're all talking about, it has to record. Now, in recording the content of people's meetings, that's when it potentially becomes sensitive. And secondly, preserving recordings of meetings and then the future custody of them, the future use of them. So any thoughts on that and how that whole security, privacy thing, potential misuse of recorded material, any thoughts on that aspect of
it's a concern. It's a concern that I have for a couple of reasons. One is if I just think about, in a commercial setting like Muriel, our customers and, large banks or consultancies, you're talking about a merger and an acquisition or something like that. Is, well, guess what? You don't want something else listening in that is then going to be recorded necessarily, right? And I've worked with several companies where, at least at the moment, ChatGPT is just blocked, right, because of security concerns. So there are businesses and industries, regulated industries, where that's just from right out of the gate, that is a concern. I think there's also a concern that just as an employee, imagine, we've seen this already. If there's a legal situation and then all of the emails that you've ever written or all of your Slack chats are now up for discovery in a court case, right? And now we're talking about even more of if you're human, Karen, right? Even more of you is out there. Could that be used against you in the future? I think that's a concern, and I bet the laws haven't even caught up yet to that.
Well,
that's
the whole point of the letter.
So yeah, we all of these things that we said up until this point, and thanks for the fly, Martin, here, but all of the things we said up to this point are exciting for us, right, as well too. But we also have to approach it with a very careful eye around privacy and confidentiality, I believe.
Yeah,
maybe we have to be careful to not be too much of our human selves.
There you go.
The dark side of human.
I could share a story that is from a different angle, so not about legal issues or regulations and so on, but how we use the data that we collect. I started my career as a primary school teacher, and there was quite a young principal, a really great guy, and then an older colleague, and that older guy didn't like the principal, so in every meeting he made notes, really decent notes, and then it could be like after 8 years of principal saying something in a new meeting, this guy went back to his notes. Hey, 8 years ago you said something totally opposite, so can you decide that what is your opinion?
like you're not entitled to change your mind or change.
Yeah, every 8th year.
It just made me realize that that's also very one-sided, right? So if one person's writing something and the other person isn't,
yeah,
then it's one word against the other. Whereas if it's recorded and you're both in the same space, maybe that's actually a protection. That's another way to look at it.
Part of my reason for asking this question is when I in a prior life, I was a professional pilot. So I'm kind of steeped in the whole background, the technical background of aviation. And one of the key safety features in an aircraft is the cockpit voice recorder and the aircraft data recorder. And all of you are familiar with those, the black box and everything. But when they were being brought in, so let's wind back to kind of 40, 45, maybe 50 years ago, when they were being brought in, major concerns were raised by the pilot community about, but hang on, this is my office. This is where I go to work for 6 or 8 hours. It's absolutely closed. It's personal. And now you want to record it. You want to keep it. And in the event there's an accident, you now want to extract it. How do I know you're not going to extract the information when there's no accident? So a whole body of actual legislation, international legislation built up around how that preserved data in a very specific context could be used or not used, as the case may be. And I'm just wondering, does that provide some kind of a signpost for where the ubiquity of AI might just need to have some kind of a protective legislative framework around it to say that the reason for using data cannot stray outside certain parameters? Otherwise, we really kill the possibility of people genuinely sharing their real thoughts. Would you have any reaction or response to that, or would that become just too claustrophobic and just kill the whole benefits of AI in the first place?
I mean, I think that's what I was suggesting when I said, the legislation hasn't come up. It doesn't necessarily need to be legislation. I think there could also be policies, like company policies, and there are already company policies like chat versus email. Who owns that, right?
Yeah.
And I think employees know now, I know my company owns all of my company emails. In the end, they're not looking at them in the moment, but once I leave, or if there is a court case or something that needs to be investigated, I realize that my company email is different than my personal email in terms of who owns that content. So I think there needs to be some wrapper around it, right? Because Karen, as Martin was talking, I was thinking, we need to be more human, and I think what I now imagine is you get into a meeting that's AI driven and nobody's talking because they're afraid to put anything on record. The opposite happens. So we have to be careful of that too.
We do. And I mean, who here is not on Facebook or something similar?
Oh, not. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on it. Yes.
Yeah. Most of us are on it or something similar. We pay taxes, presumably. So in reality, they can do what they want with our phone conversations already. They can already do whatever they want with Facebook. I don't care what anybody says, right? I'm praying that my WhatsApp calls are still encrypted, but I believe they are. But, for how long, who knows? So, if I think of, 20, 30 years ago, what we're talking about today would have been just ridiculous because of privacy and this, that, or the perception of privacy, which is being eroded every day. Now, that's not to say that I know very little about this, other than listening to some really very clever people on this subject. I spend every day watching at least one YouTube, they probably need to, I like the word policy versus another legislative thing, because I just think that's dangerous as well. Yeah.
And I think here AI makes a difference. So if you think about recording of the meetings, who watches the recorded meetings? No one. You never go back to them. No. But when it's transcribed by AI and you can search for anything, then it becomes like dangerous, or you need to be really careful how the data is utilized.
Yeah, can I add to that then, Paul? If I go back to Ilkka, a point that you made, a little while ago, that we could have 60 or 70 people with the microphones muted. But then you might say, well, why do we need a microphone and a screen at all? Why not just, here's a topic, put the topic out to people, just record your thoughts, push them into AI, get the analysis, get the output, and forget the meeting. We don't need a meeting.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, Jim, does that take us to where?
No, I don't see that happening. Actually, I think it'll take away the administrative parts of it, the transactional parts of it. But I totally agree with Ilkka, and then Karen, I think you would agree too. We like to meet because there's a human element of even work, right? There's this idea of, well, this is work over here and life over here, or work and play or not. No, you know what? I have relationships at work. They're a different type of relationship. It's not my family relationship or friends, although those domains even overlap. I actually did a little bit of research on this topic of work friends. How many people have somebody that they worked with that they consider a friend, and maybe even after you left your job, you stay in contact with that person because you know what? I've asked people that, Karen, and everybody says in their career they've had somebody they consider a friend at work. We like to meet. Ilka said it. We like to meet, and we like to meet because we're human beings, right? So I think AI will make that more central by taking all the administrative work away from us. But if we never met, what is a job? What is a team? What is a company then if we never meet, right?
2 things came to mind. One is our school friends. Is that not our first place of work or whatever we want to call it? All right. For some of us, yes, some of us no, but but those people, that's where we made friends there. I mean, we always need to be somewhere to make those friends. We don't meet them in the bar, really. All right. Some people may, but for the most part, no, we meet them in our places of continuous engagement, if you like. And the second thing, or before that, was I'm thinking I have my colleague Nuala and I mean, we work miles apart, and we often just sit here working, but with the screens on. So we have Zoom on. We're not talking. But it's that moment of, as I was doing this, what do you think about this? It's that incidental moments that you can still create. It's not quite the same, but you can create it here if you have good intention, So I think that's still why, even though you could all be sitting there typing stuff away, which is important to capture, but for those, I just want to run this idea past you, and without having to say, have you got 5 minutes to yada, 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 get onto Zoom or whatever it is, you're just there. And there's some power in that.
Which is the equivalent of having somebody sat at the desk next to you. They just happen to be 500 miles away, but
through a screen, and it works. Nothing beats being in the same room.
Yeah.
This theme is so inspiring that it brings a lot of ideas in my mind. So one thing that we have been trying to figure out is that can AI learn to be a great facilitator? And what would that look like?
Wow, what would
so, and one thing when we are recording could be that it's truly analyzing that what is happening in the room. We like a long time ago, we used a method from Losada that is about what kind of speech we have in the meeting. So is it positive, negative? Is it about us or others? And it is like, how do you say it? Is it like statement or is it like open question? And something that came out of the data that was really surprising, and you cannot feel it, you cannot recognize it in the meeting, was that, once you are in a meeting and one person is speaking at a time, you are waiting for your turn to say something. What is the basic of great dialogue are open-ended questions. But who makes those good questions in a meeting when you are waiting for your turn? But from the data, we realize that whenever someone is making open-ended question in a meeting, 2 or 3 minutes later, there's a huge amount of positive communication that makes a difference. But there's this gap, and you cannot recognize it without the data. But that was really, really surprising.
And that gap, I presume, is while the human is processing the question, making the associations, the connections, formulating the response, and then is that what it's accounting for, that gap, Ilka?
Yeah, I think there might be still someone waiting for their turn.
Okay.
So the question is like open in the air, and then it might turn, or then it's like the energy is coming in slightly.
Waves.
Our neurons start working together and in sync, you know, so we bring in the emotions and the neuroscience and all of that, then there's all sorts of other lovely things going on here. But,
so if AI beside of recording stuff could make interventions that, hey guys, now there could be a place for a great question, who would like to do it?
That's amazing. Martin,
and that's when all the
mindful of
humans
time.
go quiet. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, go on.
Mindful of time, we need to wrap up.
Wow.
Friends and colleagues, it's been a wonderful conversation so far, but our viewers have other things to do, I'm sure, here on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, where we will be live today.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation, because I think at the end of the conversation, it's certainly in my mind, it's left me with a massive amount more things that you would now want to explore, delve into, consider, than certainly what I had in my mind when we started the conversation. Ilkka, you started with the concept of real-time analysis by AI, and that analysis could be done thematically, through summaries, through filtering, through identifying concerns, and so on. We talked then about the possibility of AI being able to support the engagement of significantly bigger numbers, 50, 80, 100, 150 people, where it can keep track of considerably more data than the normal human participant or facilitator. I suppose what that leads to, and Jim, I think you picked this one up, was the idea that maybe our whole concept of what it means to meet needs to shift. But that would have to be qualified by a point that Karen and Ilkka made, which is that while we may not like meetings as humans, we absolutely not only like to meet, I think, but we need to meet. That's part of the human condition. Jim, you raised the point that if we don't meet, how do we have community? How do we have organizations? How do we have groups? How do we have teams? So the picture emerging from our conversation is that AI has this possibility to act as a fly on the wall. I think I introduced the phrase fly on the wall. It has that possibility not to take over the meeting, but actually to add to the meeting something that we humans actually can't add to the meeting. We can't step back from the totality of the conversation that's taking place. We can't analyze that totality in real time. AI can do that. And then it can feed back into the conversation. And Ilkka, your point just towards the end of our discussion was maybe it can feed back in with a judicious question, with a thought-provoking question, with a summarizing question that can help to bring focus back, not to where AI decides the focus should be, but where AI has analyzed our content and said, here's the breakdown, here's the weighting, here's the emotion, and when we put it together algorithmically, here's the conclusion that you guys are reaching, not that AI is reaching. But that then brings us to, I suppose, I raised the point about security and the concept of, if we're all being recorded, if that recording is being retained, and the purpose or role to which that recording is put in the short future or even in the long future, do we end up needing to protect and preserve that through some form of legislative framework? Jim, you raised the point that, well, perhaps organization norms, culture, standing operating procedures, guidelines, perhaps they can help us here. But it also begs the question that if people use AI output nefariously, then does it expose people to the point where they stop contributing themselves or of themselves out of concern that they may be misrepresented at a later date because that recording is there. And Ilke, you made the point that transcripts of the recordings are even more risky because they're now searchable. And so there's a big question there that we've touched on, but we haven't explored or we haven't bottomed it out. The overall conclusion that I'm drawing from our conversation so far is actually AI won't make meetings obsolete because we're humans, we're going to continue meeting. However, AI has a very strong possibility of completely transforming what we mean by meetings. And we all might just need to go back to the drawing board to say, well, what do we want meetings to be in light of the fact that we have this ear fly on the wall who can do so much more that we can't? And then we can ask ourselves, okay, how might we change our meetings in order to make maximum use of this all listening fly on the wall?
Absolutely, Martin. Thank you so much for the summary and golden nugget from our dear guest speakers and on any particular order.
I just wanted to, my mind just kind of went back to the question of, so then what is the human part of it? And I always end up at imagination. And I think, part of us being human is our imagination, which is even different than creativity in my mind. So if we can get the administration and the transactional parts done, we can be more imaginative. So I don't think it'll replace gatherings and meetings, as you mentioned, Martin. I think it'll allow us to be more imaginative together as a team.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim.
I think just be curious and see how many people you can get to be curious together, to see, and not to be afraid, because I think there's a lot of fear out there at the moment as well with all of this. And don't be afraid of it. We do have influence over all of this as individuals. So if we use these tools in a positive, imaginative, creative way, then that can be a good thing. That can really enhance life, actually, as we know it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karin. And last but not least, the person who actually innovate the industry to introduce AI in meetings takes the last word in our AI meetings episode. That's fine. Ilkka.
Thanks, Paul. So I'm always thinking that language is important. And when we have a word meeting that has a lot of history, and what if we would like to start from the scratch and think that we would like to meet each other, and how could we call it to make a difference? Or, there's conferences and unconferences. So what unmeetings would look like?
I love it.
Great. I mean, we couldn't have a better end of the program. And thank you so much, dear guest speakers, Jim Kalbach from Mural, Ilkka Mäkitalo is Howspace founder, and Karin Overy, one of the most Howspace facilitator experts I know. Thank you so much for joining, Karin. And of course, to my dear co-host, Martin Duffy, always doing these amazing summaries and keeping track of the conversation. And it was really, really great to have this conversation. And we'll see each other soon, I hope.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks.